You're at a work lunch. Your American colleague says, "We should do this again sometime." You smile, check your calendar, and suggest next Tuesday. She looks uncomfortable and says, "Oh, I'll have to check." You feel confused. Did you do something wrong?
I had this exact thing happen to me when I first moved to the UK. A British coworker invited me to come round for tea sometime. I thought it was a real invitation, so I asked, "What day works for you?" He looked so awkward and said, "Oh, I'll let you know." I didn't understand until months later. It was just a polite phrase, not an actual invitation.
That's the problem. Cultural misunderstandings happen constantly in English, and if you don't know how to clarify, you end up confused, embarrassed, or accidentally offending someone.
Today, we're teaching you 20 specific phrases organized into a 4-stage system so you can recognize, fix, and recover from any cross-cultural mix-up in English.
I'm Olivia.
And I'm Paul. Welcome to English Together.
Here's why this topic is so important. When you're speaking English, you're not just learning a language, you're navigating multiple cultures. American culture, British culture, Australian culture, Canadian culture, they're all different. And if you don't know how to ask about cultural differences, small misunderstandings become big problems.
You might accidentally offend someone or miss important information or feel excluded from conversations because you don't understand the cultural context.
So we created what we call the 4-stage culture save system. 4 stages that match how cultural misunderstandings actually happen. Stage 1, notice. You recognize something feels culturally confusing. Stage 2, ask. You politely request clarification. Stage 3, explain. You share your own cultural perspective. Stage 4, recover. You gracefully fix a cultural mistake you've already made.
So instead of just nodding and pretending you understand, you have a system for handling cultural confusion with confidence.
Exactly. In the next 18 minutes, we'll go through all 4 stages, give you 5 phrases for each stage, share real-life examples, and show you how to use them in actual conversations.
Let's start with stage 1. Notice.
Stage 1 is notice. These are phrases you use when you sense cultural confusion, but you're not sure yet. Something feels off, but you can't quite name it. These phrases help you test whether it's a cultural difference or just your imagination.
So you're checking in without making it awkward.
Exactly. Here's the first notice phrase. Is that a blank thing? Let's say someone mentions bringing a plate to a party. You're confused. Why would you bring a plate? You could say, "Is that an Australian thing? I'm not familiar with that expression."
Oh, so you're acknowledging you don't know, but you're framing it as cultural, not as you being stupid.
Exactly. Second notice phrase. I'm not sure I'm following the cultural context here. This is perfect when people are talking about something and you sense it's culturally specific, but you can't pinpoint what.
Example?
Let's say your colleagues are joking about something related to Thanksgiving traditions. You could say, I'm not sure I'm following the cultural context here. I didn't grow up celebrating Thanksgiving. Can you explain?
That's so much better than just sitting there confused.
Perfect. Third notice phrase. This might be a cultural difference, but you use this when you want to bring up something that feels different from your culture. Example. This might be a cultural difference, but in my country, we don't usually bring gifts to someone's house the first time we visit. Is that expected here?
You're not saying anyone is wrong, you're just naming the difference.
Exactly. Fourth notice phrase. I'm picking up on something I don't quite understand. This is vague on purpose. You know something's off, but you're not sure what. It invites the other person to explain.
Like, I'm picking up on something I don't quite understand. Did I miss a cultural reference?
Perfect. Fifth notice phrase. Where I'm from, we do this differently. Simple and direct. Example. Where I'm from, we usually arrive 30 minutes late to parties. Is it different here?
Oh, that's so useful because it shares your cultural norm while asking about theirs.
Right. And here's the key. You're not apologizing for not knowing. You're simply acknowledging a potential cultural gap. There's a huge difference.
What's the difference?
I'm sorry I don't understand makes you sound like you're at fault. This might be a cultural difference, makes it sound neutral, just two cultures meeting.
That's a powerful reframe.
Stage 2 is ask. Once you've noticed cultural confusion, these are the phrases you use to ask for clarification politely and without sounding ignorant.
Because there's no shame in asking about culture.
None. In fact, in English-speaking cultures, especially in professional settings, asking about cultural norms is seen as culturally intelligent, not ignorant.
Okay, what's the first ask phrase?
Can you help me understand what that means in this context? This is beautifully neutral. You're not saying, I don't understand. You're asking for context. Example, someone says, yeah, we'll touch base next week. You could say, can you help me understand what touch base means in this context? I want to make sure I'm clear.
You're positioning it as wanting clarity, not admitting ignorance.
Exactly. Second ask phrase, what's the cultural background behind that? Perfect for traditions, expressions, or behaviors you don't understand. Example, what's the cultural background behind celebrating St. Patrick's Day? I see everyone wearing green, but I don't know why.
You're showing curiosity, which is positive.
Third ask phrase, is there something I should know about how this works here? This is great for unspoken rules. Example, you're invited to a potluck. Is there something I should know about how potlucks work here? Should I bring a specific type of food?
That's so practical.
Fourth ask phrase, I'm not familiar with that. Could you give me some context? Direct and honest. Someone mentions March Madness. You say, I'm not familiar with that. Could you give me some context?
What's the fifth ask phrase?
How does that typically work in blank? Example, how does tipping typically work in the US? I want to make sure I'm doing it correctly.
These all feel respectful, not apologetic.
Exactly. You're asking for information, not apologizing for existing.
Okay, so we've noticed the cultural confusion. We've asked for clarification. What's stage 3?
Stage 3 is explain. These are phrases you use to share your own cultural perspective or explain why you did something a certain way. This prevents people from thinking you're rude when you're just following your cultural norms.
Can you give an example of when you'd need this?
Sure. Let's say you're at a meeting and you don't make a lot of eye contact. In some cultures, that's respectful. But in the US or UK, it might seem like you're not confident or not listening. So you could explain, in my culture, maintaining constant eye contact can be seen as aggressive, so I'm working on adjusting to the norms here.
You're giving context so people don't misinterpret your behavior.
Exactly. First explain phrase, in my culture, we typically blank. In my culture, we don't make small talk with strangers, so I'm still getting used to chatting with people in elevators here.
You're explaining, not defending.
Right. Second explain phrase, I was taught that. Example, I was taught that it's rude to eat while walking, so I always sit down to eat. I know that's different here.
Third phrase?
Where I come from, it's considered polite, rude, or normal to blank. Example, where I come from, it's considered polite to refuse an offer once or twice before accepting. I didn't realize that's not the case here, so if I seem hesitant, that's why.
Oh, that's such a common misunderstanding.
It is. Let me tell you what happened to me. I was learning Japanese and my Japanese host offered me tea. I said no thank you because I didn't want to inconvenience her. She looked hurt. I didn't realize that in Japanese culture, you're supposed to accept offers of hospitality. If I'd said, where I come from, we often refuse to be polite, but I'd actually love some tea, it would have cleared up the confusion immediately.
So you're bridging the cultural gap by explaining your reasoning.
Exactly. Fourth explain phrase, I'm still adjusting to the cultural norms here. This is honest and humble. Example, I'm still adjusting to the cultural norms here. I'm not used to people being so direct in meetings. It's not bad, just different from what I'm used to.
What's the fifth explain phrase?
My understanding was that, but I'm learning that's different here. Example, my understanding was that being 15 minutes late is normal, but I'm learning that's different here. I'll make sure to be on time from now on.
You're showing you're adaptable.
Exactly.
Okay, pause for 1 second. We've just given you 15 phrases across 3 stages. But here's the thing. You need to practice saying them out loud, or they won't come naturally when you're in a real cross-cultural situation.
So right now, we want you to say 3 phrases with us. Ready?
First, a notice phrase. Say, "This might be a cultural difference, but where I'm from, we do this differently."
Go ahead. Say it out loud right now, even if you're alone. We'll wait.
Good. Now, an ask phrase. Say, "Can you help me understand what that means in this context?"
One more, an explain phrase. Say, in my culture, we typically do it this way, so I'm still adjusting.
Did you do it? If you said them out loud, you're already ahead of 90% of learners. That's how you build the confidence to actually use these phrases when cultural confusion happens.
Now let's talk about stage 4, recover. Stage 4 is recover. These are phrases you use when you've already made a cultural mistake and you need to acknowledge it and fix it gracefully.
So, like, you already offended someone or did something wrong and now you need to repair it.
Exactly. And here's the key. Everyone makes cultural mistakes. Even people who've lived in a country for years still mess up sometimes. The difference between awkward and graceful is how you recover.
What's the first recover phrase?
I didn't realize that was inappropriate, offensive, or different here. Thank you for letting me know. This acknowledges the mistake without over-apologizing. Example, someone tells you that you shouldn't have asked about their salary. You say, I didn't realize that was inappropriate here. Thank you for letting me know. I won't make that mistake again.
You're accepting the feedback without making it a huge, dramatic thing.
Right. Second recover phrase, I apologize, I was following my cultural norms without realizing they're different here. Example, you showed up to a dinner party empty-handed. The host seems surprised. You say, I apologize, in my culture we don't typically bring gifts to dinner, but I was following my norms without realizing they're different here. I'll bring something next time.
You're explaining why it happened while also committing to adjust.
Exactly. Third recover phrase. That wasn't my intention. Can I explain what I meant? This is for when you said something that was misinterpreted culturally. Example, you called your boss by their first name and they seemed uncomfortable. You say, that wasn't my intention to be disrespectful. Can I explain? In my country, we use first names even with managers. Should I use your title instead?
You're clarifying your intention while asking for the correct norm.
Fourth recover phrase. I appreciate you pointing that out. I'm still learning the cultural expectations here. Example, someone tells you that you shouldn't have interrupted during the meeting. You say, I appreciate you pointing that out. I'm still learning the cultural expectations here. In my culture, interrupting shows engagement, but I understand it's different here.
What's the fifth recover phrase?
How can I handle this better next time? This is forward-looking. You're not dwelling on the mistake, you're asking for guidance. Example, you realize you made a cultural mistake with a gesture. How can I handle greetings better next time? I want to make sure I'm being respectful.
I love that because it shows you care about improving.
Exactly.
I want to ask about something. In some cultures, admitting you don't know something or made a mistake can feel really shameful. How do you get past that?
That's such an important question. Here's the cultural reframe. In most English-speaking professional cultures, especially in the US, Canada, UK, and Australia, asking questions and admitting cultural confusion is seen as a strength, not a weakness.
Why?
Because it shows you're culturally aware, adaptable, and willing to learn. The opposite, pretending you understand when you don't, is what actually damages your credibility.
So it's better to ask than to fake it.
Always. In fact, I'll tell you a story. I was working with a colleague from Japan, and she never asked questions in meetings. I thought she understood everything. Months later, I found out she'd been confused the entire time, but didn't want to look stupid by asking. If she just said, "Can you help me understand the cultural context here?"
We could have clarified immediately.
So her silence actually hurt her more than asking would have.
Exactly. And here's another cultural insight. Different English-speaking cultures handle directness differently. Americans tend to be very direct. British people can be more indirect and use humor to soften messages. Australians are often casual and use banter.
So even within English-speaking cultures, there are differences.
Right. Which is why these clarifying phrases are so valuable. They work across all of these cultures.
Can we talk through some specific scenarios where you'd use these phrases?
Absolutely. Scenario 1. Someone uses sarcasm, but you can't tell if they're joking or serious.
You could use a notice phrase. I'm picking up on something I don't quite understand. Are you joking or being serious? I'm not always great at detecting sarcasm in English.
Perfect. Scenario 2. You're invited to a casual work event, but you don't know what casual means in terms of dress code.
Ask phrase. Can you help me understand what casual means in this context? Should I wear jeans or more business casual?
Great. Scenario 3. You accidentally called your colleague's spouse by the wrong name, and they seemed offended.
Recover phrase. I apologize, that wasn't my intention. I'm still learning everyone's names. What should I call them?
Excellent. Scenario 4. Your boss says, let's circle back on this, and you don't know what that means.
Ask phrase. I'm not familiar with circle back. Could you give me some context? Does that mean we'll discuss it later?
Perfect. Let me share one more personal story. When I first moved to Australia, I was confused because people kept calling me mate and making fun of me in a teasing way. In my culture, teasing someone you just met is rude. I felt uncomfortable but didn't say anything for weeks.
What finally happened?
Finally, I used an explain phrase. I said to a colleague, in my culture, we typically don't tease people unless we know them really well, so I'm still adjusting to the Australian style of banter. It's not bad, just different for me. And he said, oh, mate, that's actually how we show we like you here. If we're taking the piss, it means you're one of us.
So your explanation led to his explanation.
Exactly. And from then on, I understood the cultural context and could relax and even join in. We've taught over 85,000 students these exact cultural clarification phrases, and you know what they tell us? That learning to ask about culture without shame transformed not just their English, it transformed their confidence in cross-cultural situations.
They stopped feeling like outsiders who didn't get it and started feeling like cultural learners who were actively bridging gaps.
And ironically, people respected them more for asking than they would have if they'd just pretended to understand.
All right, let's recap the 4-stage culture save system.
Stage 1. Notice. Recognizing cultural confusion. Is that a cultural reference? I'm not sure I'm following the cultural context here. This might be a cultural difference, but I'm picking up on something I don't quite understand. Where I'm from, we do this differently.
Stage 2. Ask. Clarifying politely. Can you help me understand what that means in this context? What's the cultural background behind that? Is there something I should know about how this works here? I'm not familiar with that. Could you give me some context? How does that typically work in country?
Stage 3. Explain. Sharing your perspective. In my culture, I was taught that where I come from, it's considered polite or rude or normal to. I'm still adjusting to the cultural norms here. My understanding was that, but I'm learning that's different here.
Stage 4. Recover. Fixing mistakes gracefully. I didn't realize that was inappropriate or different here. Thank you for letting me know. I apologize. I was following my cultural norms without realizing they're different here. That wasn't my intention. Can I explain what I meant? I appreciate you pointing that out. I'm still learning the cultural expectations here. How can I handle this better next time?
Your homework this week? Use at least 3 of these phrases in real situations. Start with low-stakes conversations, like asking a colleague about a cultural reference you don't understand, and build from there.
And remember the cultural key. Asking about culture shows intelligence and respect, not ignorance. Confident speakers ask questions. Insecure speakers pretend to know everything.
All right, we covered so much today, and we're really proud of you for sticking with us.
If this lesson helped you, please give it a like right now. It helps other English learners discover these cultural clarification strategies.
And if you haven't already, subscribe to English Together. We post a new practical English lesson every single week.
Now, here's our question for you. Have you ever had a funny, awkward, or confusing cross-cultural moment? Maybe you misunderstood a cultural reference and responded completely wrong. Or maybe you accidentally offended someone by following your own cultural norms. Or maybe you spent weeks confused about something before finally asking.
I told you about being confused about sarcasm, and Paul shared his Australian banter confusion and his Japanese tea refusal disaster. Now it's your turn. Tell us your story in the comments. We read every single one and will reply to as many as we can. Plus, your story will help other learners feel less alone, because cross-cultural misunderstandings happen to literally everyone.
Remember, cultural misunderstandings aren't a sign you're failing. They're a natural part of navigating multiple cultures. The only mistake is pretending you understand when you don't.
Use the four-stage culture save system. Notice, ask, explain, and recover, and you'll handle any cross-cultural situation with grace and confidence.
You're not just learning English, you're learning to bridge cultures, and that's an incredible skill.
Thanks for learning with us today.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.